All right, we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Circus of Lies live stream. We have Jeebus and Blarg on right now, and I presume maybe others will be showing up, but I am not sure. And also, we're waiting for possibly Brad from last week joining us. I am not sure if he will be joining since I don't have his contact, and I've tagged him in this live stream. But yeah, I don't see him. He's not a regular in the comments, so he may or may not show up. If he does show up, we'll keep going on the discussion we had last week, where we had just gotten into the death penalty discussion. If he's not here, we can still have that discussion or anything else. But before we start, let me just quickly bring up. So I've had this guy. I don't know if you guys remember him. This RB Win. Let me look this up.
The Mormon.
Hey, Ook.
Hey, I'm going to keep myself sort of. That sinus infection has come back. I've given up using hankies, tissues, and moved on to tea towels. So, yeah. But yeah, he's a Mormon, that twin.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he's a Mormon who's smarter than Einstein and Lorenz and Madame Curie.
And the whole premise is we believe in something that's magical. What?
Well, you mean for this relativity thing?
Yeah.
No, I mean well, he says. I think he's saying that relativity is supernatural, and atheists who believe in this are.
Is that the okay?
Yeah, So there's he's saying that this relativity thing isn't right, and this Galilean transformation is the correct one, and apparently all the other physicists, including Einstein, are wrong to believe that Einstein was correct.
So yeah, funny how Einstein's math is the one that gives the correct correction factors for the GPS satellites, and they don't use the Galilean relativity for that process because what's that? It doesn't give the correct answers.
Well, what's really weird is, and I did ask him to come on this live stream so that he can actually talk to or tell us what the issue is, and I think he meant.
Is it Sunday or Saturday in the US?
It's Saturday.
Being a Mormon, he wouldn't be able to use technology, one would think.
Really, Mormons have that restriction? That sounds more like
there might be JW
Orthodox Jews. Yeah.
No, I used to be a Mormon. You weren't allowed to do anything on Sunday that would require the use of services that made somebody else do the work. But every people,
I worked with
all the time. Yeah.
I worked with a guy who lied then. That's really strange because he took every Saturday. I can't work Saturdays. Lying prick. Huh. All right.
Religious people, you can't trust them.
No.
Well, the excuse that he gave wasn't about the Sabbath or not being able to do something. So he's saying he's after I've invited him on the live stream, he claims that I am not the one who does not want conversations, which is, I don't know what that means, but I guess he's saying that this is hilarious. He's saying that I want to get him in a verbal conversation and then call him dirty names and hang up the phone like all atheists do. I don't know how many atheists you have called where they ended up calling him dirty names and hanging up the phone, but I guess maybe he has some.
I'm gonna guess then that he's called into some of the other shows. Anyone know someone who's called in? Think of anyone who's called into one of the assorted shows and talked about relativity? Does that ring a bell? Because yeah, he is such an asshole that there's no doubt he would have got sworn at and hung up on.
I think there's Dr. Adair on the line, the physicist.
Sorry, what'd you say?
On the line, they have a cosmologist physicist or something.
Oh,
Dr.
yeah.
Adair.
Is it Alan or something?
Alan
No?
Adair or something.
Yeah. I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Odell or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll go back through. I'm not doing anything for the rest of the day. But yeah, I'll have a look. I don't recall anything. Sometimes.
Well, I mean, I think there are kind of a lot of callers who come in with some wacko physics thing. So I don't know. Oh yeah, Aaron Adair. Tilting windmills.
Yeah.
I knew it was like something Aaron but anyway, yeah. I actually I like him when he's on. He's especially when it gets to discussing physics. He really seems to know his stuff. So yeah, I like listening to him.
I do know that David Newman, the cosmology of David, called.
Oh, recently?
When Adair was on, when he first started on the line.
Oh.
And got.
Oh, that would have been an embarrassment.
Oh, it was shocking. He just laughed, basically. Almost fell off his chair. Yeah. But I think that's one of the episodes, you know how Jim, that the channel got hacked.
Oh, yeah.
They lost a lot of content.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah. But he got it back pretty quick. But yeah.
I think he got the channel up pretty quick, but yeah, I don't think he has all the videos.
No, he every now and again he makes a little plug for. Did anyone tape any of the old stuff? Send it in.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
But when that happens, I had my NAS hacked and ransomware done on it. But that happened while I was away, and the portal for paying the ransom was only open for 17 hours and then disappeared forever. So even if I wanted to pay it, it was unrecoverable, and my backups hadn't been working for a while since I'd moved over to a new backup drive because the other one had failed. So backups were dead and the NAS was unrecoverable. But helpfully, the drive was the old drive I hadn't thrown away, and it was recoverable. Yeah, it cost a bit of money to put it into a professional data recovery service. And yeah, they pulled the drive apart and put in a new little motherboard or whatever it was that they needed to do to get it to run. And yes, recovered everything. You go, and yeah, that pretty much held everything I had, all of my CV, all of my previous work, all the photos, everything. It was a shocker.
Wow.
Oh,
so
I liked your fish video. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, we were really surprised. The wife went in there and saw the fish in the wrong container and thinking, how did that happen? What the frick's going on here? So and after it did it a couple more times, yeah, she put the cam on and streamed and recorded for ages. It actually ended up sort of streaming and recording all night. Turned it off the next morning when she went back into work, and then I snipped that out of the out of it. So yeah,
you could actually see the fish working out. Okay, I got to do this, I got to do that, and I got to turn sideways here, and whoop, Yay!
I think there's a Pixar movie about that. Oh, in Finding Nemo or one of the sequels, I think something like that happens.
Yeah, those little fish are kind of amazing, actually. They're an interesting evolutionary story because they're obligate air breathers. If you keep them underwater, they will drown.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Bedders are
Huh.
like 4 of the 5 lungfish. They will drown underwater. And arapaimas will also drown underwater. They're those giant, sort of long-bodied fish from the Amazon.
Oh, yeah.
Are obligate
Yep.
air breathers. But the lungfish and arapaimas have actual lungs, evolved from the swim bladder, whereas the bedders and gouramis and bashirs have a labyrinth organ, which is a modified first gill arch. So it's a highly vascularized, folded bony structure up in the top of the head.
Someone needs to tell Nappy that's a new anatomy.
Yeah.
No,
Evolved
it's
long.
not, because it came from the bladder, the swim bladder. So
That guy's
It's like
something else.
it's like the way how the Australian monitors lizards are so fast. They've got they've got a modified lung. Most reptiles can't sprint or chase down like the biggest one we got in Australia is called a parenti, and it's able to catch rabbits, run them down. You don't, yeah, it's a modified breathing. Their lungs have. It's like going from reptile to mammal lung. It's I've forgotten the exact thing. Brain's a bit of a mush today, but yeah, it's pretty amazing to watch one of those. You got something like a 6-7 foot lizard taken off after a rabbit, and your money would be on the rabbit, but nope, it's gone.
Yeah, with most reptiles, the movement of the limb moves the lungs as well. So and they've got the flexing of the body moves the lungs. So as they waddle side to side, what that causes is that the air just goes from the left lung to the right, to the left to the right, rather than in and out. So yeah, they can't breathe and run at the same time. Whereas the monitor lizards are yes, they have a modification that allows them to actually pump air in and out again.
It's quite amazing to hear them because it's like I don't know whether anyone's mucked around with snakes or anything, but what they can just, when they go to swallow something big, they actually project their God, my brain's a mush today.
Trachea.
Thank you. Out the side of their mouth so they don't choke.
Yeah, if you look at
funny.
the evolution of our lungs, it's an interesting one because you can look at it's a little bit like the eyeballs. If anyone tries to go and say that an eyeball, for example, is what's the term they keep using, is it can't be reduced, irreducibly complex. Yeah, but then you can go and have a look at every other version of eyeballs exist in every other reduced version of eyeballs exist currently out there in a living animal. The same thing with lungs. So if you look at animals like I was mentioning, the fish with modified swim bladders that become increasingly vascularized and become compartmentalized to have more surface area. You see that in those arapaimas and lungfish. You also see it in the gobies that become mud skippers have a similar setup. If you then look at the frogs, the amphibians have essentially a more vascularized, more chambered version of a swim bladder, a lung, but they don't have a trachea and they don't have ribs. So they're not capable of doing vacuum breathing the way we do. We create a vacuum and it pulls air into the lungs through the trachea. They have to create pressure in their mouth, and then it pushes the air into the lungs. And then that also works because they've got a really short, squat neck, the same as the fish. They're really close to the mouth, that connection part. But as the neck begins to grow and evolve into reptiles and mammals, the chest cavity gets further away from where the air comes in, so the trachea evolves. It stiffens up the tube in between the two of them, which then enables vacuum style breathing and makes ribs a thing that are useful. But yeah, so you can see all the evolution of modern sort of mammalian lungs as you look through it.
And the same thing happens with the heart as well. The 4-chambered mammalian heart, if you get down to the amphibians, is 3-chamber, and then in fish is 2-chamber. And if you get down to more simpler animals, it's basically, or the insects, it just becomes a diffusion kind of thing. So
you get some pipe work. You get some pipes that become slightly muscularized that help pump in some of the more simple organisms as well. And it's not a big stretch to go from there to have an enlargement of an area and become a sac that pumps rather than just a tube.
Yeah. I mean, so for every one of these things, the eye or the lung or the heart and all that, there are perfectly good scientific explanations for those. But for these guys, they just, they don't even want to bother, right, looking at it to try to see, whether they're right or wrong.
No, they strongly resist it. Just so you get that irreducible complexity claim about the eyeball, and then you can easily do that. Like an eyeball is still, our eyeball's still useful if you remove the lens. And that was a common operation for people with cataracts. You go, a lens, an eyeball without a lens is better than a cloudy lens. So you can't see great, but you can do better than with that, and you get that throughout the animal kingdom. But so they've moved away from that somewhat, and quite often will bring up something like the flagella motor in single cell like bacteria.
Yeah.
And say that thing is too complex to have formed, and except the flagella itself is almost exactly the same as a structure which is essentially acts as a hypodermic. So a given bacteria can actually stab a nearby bacteria or creature with this little hypodermic point that it has and inject stuff into it, whether that helps kill them or pass plasmids across. It can be used for both of those, so it's very similar to that. And in fact, some researchers have went along and genetically engineered a bacteria to remove the gene that codes for the flagella motor proteins that go around the base of that the flagella, and then let it evolve in very, very still water. So if it's in water that moves around, there's not a lot of benefit to be gained by being motile, because the water moves you to the food. But if your water's very still, it helps if you are able to move yourself. And quite quickly it re-evolved proteins to spin the flagella and become motile again. Funny that how you can't watch evolution. The claims, particularly from Nepi, that you can't that evolution hasn't been observed to happen, and you go, well, there you go, it evolved the flagella motor a second time, and so he's completely wrong there.
Yeah, well, the thing is, like, it's impossible to have this discussion with him in the comments, so, because first of all, he won't even read it if it's probably anything more than a few sentences, so that's not going to work. And he's just going to kind of dismiss it and not going to listen to any follow-up. So, and that's the reason why I do want to get these guys on this so that we can sort of quote unquote teach him science. But then, I see what's still going on with Flojo, where, he's still like stuck on this idea of, me having made a comment that evolution is not about origin of life. And he thinks and that's a gotcha. And when he says, am I lying about the above? I think he's talking about when he first started kind of cherry picking something I said and then post the whole sentence. And, I think he got grief for that. And so now he thinks that the issue is really about that, not the fact that he doesn't understand the difference between evolution and abiogenesis. And he keeps on saying, I'm lying. And there's something else kind of funny or interesting. I think and the other thing is then this whole thing about, we are the one running away from him because we refuse to, give him a call directly to his phone, even though he could just come here at any time of the week, any week.
A phone call, what is that going to achieve?
Well, two things. One, give him your phone number so he can harass you, and or dox your number. But probably more importantly, it gives him a chance to proselytize and then lie about what was said. So
can you just imagine if I didn't record what our discussion, the first discussion, he would be claiming things that I, never even said.
I mean, I was going to suggest and I don't even know what state that number belongs to, but yeah, to anyone feeling.
Well, it's Florida. He's based in Florida.
Oh, it is in Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyone near Florida, if they're feeling creative, put it on a toilet wall.
No, don't do that.
And it would be a lesson about not putting your damn details on the internet.
Yeah. So that's also going on. But, the thing is, like, someone had made a comment that basically pointed out what I was trying to get to. So Quentin D, he said it doesn't mean anything. It was clearly an example to show how evolution doesn't disprove God, and evolution can work with the God, as long as God didn't make the universe for us. Otherwise, it's hard to justify it. So that was a point I was trying to make, that, this doesn't have to be about creationism. Evolution itself doesn't have to be about creationism. You could say, God created all these animals, and then evolution just basically took off because of the way God created organisms, in the sense that there are traits that are encoded by genes that gets passed down. But we've made this comment to him over and over that abiogenesis and evolution are different, and he keeps on saying, "Oh, I know," but he doesn't.
No, because
Brad's in the comments here asking for a link.
Yeah, let me see. Let me get the link here. Where is it? Oh, here it is.
Yes, it's the standard thing though, where they just want to attack evolution and think that by attacking abiogenesis, you've got a stronger argument, because evolution's eminently demonstrable, whereas abiogenesis is not. So therefore, if you attack abiogenesis and call that evolution, you're on a winner. Except you're not. It's like the difference between starting your car and driving it. One is
I'm having trouble with the starter motor in the Volvo at the moment. It's got a flat spot, so you just got to rock it a little bit just so to move the cog, and it's a bit of a pain in the ass, but I can't be bothered getting a new one. Has anyone, once Brad is, while he's doing
Brad
his
is
thing,
on.
anyone noticed that Bob Garnett has brought up the bullshit again about the Catholic Church and pedophilia and the Lindy Chamberlain case? It's the famous "the dingo ate my baby" thing. He's actually denying that any priest has sexually abused children.
You might want to tell the Pope that, because the Pope has come out and said it.
3 popes. And I think it was Francis or Benedict in 2002 made an official visit to Australia and apologised for not only the acts done by the priest, but for the systematic cover-up helped by the Vatican. And it goes to that Tim Mitchell song, if you cover for a motherfucker, kitty fucker, you're as bad as the motherfucker who, yeah.
Well, I think it's the current Pope who put out a statement saying that basically he estimated that approximately 2% of all the priests in the Catholic Church are pederasts who have not just people attracted to, but who have interfered with others, with children. But as per the Australian Royal Commission into institutional responses to child sex, they found that number is going to be closer to 7%. That is a pretty large number.
And it really is. And I mean, as a result of that case, Australia now has the National
Redress.
Thanks. Bill, where all institutions, religious or otherwise, if they're tax exempt, you have to pay into this fund to help children who have been abused. And it's like sporting agents, sporting clubs, swim coaches, that sort of stuff. They sort of have to agree to this or they lose their tax exempt status. And it's funny that the JWs and Mormons were the last sort of major religions to sign it.
They fought hard against it.
Oh, they took it to the Supreme Court, but yeah, they lost that one. Yeah, we're going to go into the crime and punishment.
Yeah. Hold on a second. So,
You're
Brad,
right,
can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you guys.
Okay, great. Before we start, I did want to just mention this one thing. So, Monkey has been on my comments. He constantly, I guess this one is a little bit different, but he's like been making these comments about this, accusing me of trolling, I guess, and being dishonest, etc., etc. So I just wanted to say that I'm not going to respond to him. I've stopped responding to him, especially if I remember not to. And he can just kind of keep making these comments. No one believes him, I guess, except Jim and those other guys might. But
I don't even think they believe him. I don't think anyone believes. I don't think Monkey believes Jim, and Jim believes Monkey. They're just, they know they're lying. They know what they're doing themselves. They can see it, but essentially it's sectarian. So they wouldn't call out a person on their own team for anything. They'd just be 100% behind it, which I think is bullshit, because I call out atheists quite regularly for crap. If it's crap, it's crap. It doesn't matter what side of the fence you're sitting on. And if you're a theist and you're saying something good and true, then again you get called, you get thumbs up for that.
Yeah. So some things are kind of ganging up on, like, what is it? What is the name that he's using now? It used to be, that transphobe. he's
Kevin.
been okay. I guess maybe we should just call him Kevin, since he names his or changes his all the time. But he's been going on about how I banned someone, and he's probably talking about Monkey, and Monkey isn't banned on my channel. He's obviously posted a lot of comments on it. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that in case Monkey listens in.
Yeah. I've got the count for Kevin. As of the first one, when he came back, it was 3rd of April this year, and his count is now 27 as of 3 days ago. New profiles.
Yeah.
That's
anyway.
well.
So
yeah, he's disturbed.
Yeah, I did want to kind of get started with Brad so that we have time for this discussion. So Brad, when we last talked, I think we had gone and started to get into the death penalty, and we ran out of time. So we can start off there. And I think the discussion was around, kind of what you're saying, that opposition to the death penalty is immoral. And, I suppose you are saying that death penalty itself is moral, right?
Correct.
And I think it's
Do
because
you want to explain your rationale, Brad? That'd be great.
Sure. So I think where we left off last time, I explained that if you have a society of law and order, you want a fair society, a good society, a safe society. People have to know that there are certain things that the society has zero tolerance for. If you commit this kind of evil, then you will sacrifice your life. It serves as a deterrent to prevent people from doing it who would otherwise do it. And it serves as an example, and it serves as proper justice in the society.
Yeah, and the issue is that, obviously, ideally that would be the case, and just to say that there are kind of moral issues with this whole idea of punishment just for punishment's sake, right? Because essentially a revenge thing, and when we talk about God and how essentially all of humanity is being punished for the sins of Adam and Eve, we don't think that's fair, or at least the atheists don't.
I don't think that's fair either. I'm
Right,
not.
okay.
I'm not in favor of the concept of original sin.
Okay. Yeah. So ideally, you can kind of have that thought, but the real issue and the reason why they're having kind of issues with the death penalty in the U.S. is that there have been many cases where people who are innocent have been accused and go to the death penalty, and they stay there for decades until, like something like the Innocence Project ends up, getting them out because, they essentially see that, they were unfairly tried and a lot of evidence wasn't put up. But at the time of their prosecution and conviction, everyone was certain that this person had done it. And also, even when people admit, basically confess to the crime, a lot of times, there are times when they didn't really do that. There are reasons why sometimes people do that, but we can't kind of rely on us being able to know for 100% that, anyone is actually guilty, at least guilty of murder or whatever, in a way that deserves the death penalty.
Yeah,
The
I agree. There has to be a fair legal system. There has to be a fair trial. There has to be a high bar of evidence. So I agree with what you just said. Just because a lot of people think someone did something, that doesn't mean anything. You're innocent until proven guilty.
But even with all of that, Brad, people who are innocent still get convicted, and there's no possibility that doesn't matter how good your legal system is, how high the bar is. There are cases where a person is going to get over that bar who is innocent. You can never be certain that you're going to be only executing guilty people.
Yeah, you can never have any system that's 100% perfect. So I can flip it on you. With that logic, should we have no legal system? Because we'll never have a legal system that's 100% perfect.
Yeah, but the
No, but
difference is with
only
the
one
death
of these.
penalty.
Only one of these is a system in which no possibility of reparation can occur. So if a person spends 30 years in jail and turns out to be innocent, they can still get some reparation. They still have things they can do. They still have a life they can live, even if it's not a terrifically good one. But they have the choice to sort of go on with that. But the moment you go along and make death the penalty, it's a one direction thing. There is no coming back from that.
I mean, I don't think there's 99% of the time, I don't think there's much coming back from even doing 10 years in jail, let alone 30. So let me ask you this. If, let's say, somebody did a horrendous crime, do you think it would be more humane to give them a fast, painless death, or torture them for 10 years?
I've got a middle ground in there. My personal take on a lot of these things is, if your purpose is not revenge. So I see the death penalty doesn't work as a deterrent. It just doesn't. The data is clear. In states that have the death penalty, serious crimes are not less, like death penalty level crimes actually go up. They don't go down. But so it doesn't work as a deterrent. It's only there as a revenge process.
Can you post that in the chat, because I would have to respectfully challenge you. Yeah, I'd have to respectfully challenge you on that, because that seems very counterintuitive. You're saying that
it does,
Brad,
but it makes
it's
sense.
actually pretty well known.
Yeah, it is. It is well established.
It also depends. The states you're speaking of, is the death penalty just on the books, or is it being enforced often? Those are two completely different things.
So you think that someone would, because there's death penalty, they'll think, hey, I'm not going to kill this person because this state I'm in has a death penalty that's relatively quick than in another state where it's, takes many, many years. So I'd rather go there and, commit murder. That's
I
not.
think some people will, some people won't. But either way, it doesn't matter, because it accomplishes
but
the
when
goal.
you say that, then we can come back and say, well, Brad, where is your statistics on that?
Yeah. Here's another way to sort of think about it too. Let's say you stepped over the line.
Hold on. Can I say just real quick, and then I'll let you go. I just want to, before we get too far, I would say the death penalty will deter some people it won't. But either way, it will accomplish the goal, because whether on the front end it deters somebody, or on the back end it enforces justice, either way the goal is accomplished.
That's not justice, though. That's revenge. So
you can argue that any punishment is revenge. So should we have no punishment?
You can. I agree. You can make that argument. So the point I was trying to get to is, I see that both the death penalty and long incarceration periods as revenge, more so. Essentially, they're punishment rather than some form of reparation. The way I sort of look at it, let's say you definitely did the thing, you can never get let out of jail. So let's say you're facing the rest of your life in jail. You know you're never getting out of jail because you know you definitely did the thing that you're accused of. My personal take is that a person has the right to their life. They also have the right to their own death. No one else has the right to their death, but they have the right to their own. So I'm a believer in people being allowed to end their life when they choose. If they're
100%
doing it,
behind you on that one.
if they're doing it with a clear mind, then they should be allowed to end at any time they choose. And so I think that a person shouldn't have the death penalty enforced upon them. It should be given as an option to them, so that they can choose which path they want to take the rest of their life in jail or finish it off. So that's the middle ground in between your sort of two positions, Brad.
So this is one of the later studies on the deterrence effect of the death penalty, and there's a lot, going back from decades. But this one is, I think, specific because they were using sort of, I think, what they call this synthetic controls. So in here, it's actually a long, detailed study, so you can take a look at it. But basically the conclusion is that there is no evidence of a deterrent effect. And this is on 4 states. So I gave the link. You can take a look at it, but this isn't the only one. And like I said, it's fairly commonly known that the death penalty itself as a deterrent doesn't work.
Okay. And it's we're not just talking about the United States. We're talking about the world. When we say states, we mean nations. For us non-Americans.
Okay. Yeah, so there's people that are going to do the crime no matter what. But again, I would need to see in these places how often is the death penalty actually being enforced. But let me ask you guys, let's say somebody rapes a kid, it's proven they did it. What do you think the punishment should be?
But that's not the point. That's not the point.
Well, that is the point, because if you're going to criticize my punishment, you need to offer an alternative, unless you just believe in zero punishment.
Sure.
So you know what?
We just did.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you offered 30 years in prison. How is that any more moral than a death sentence?
Because it gives a chance for that person to be able to improve themselves and realize how they got to that point in their life and change and become a betterment to society.
It gives him the chance to be locked in a cage 23 hours a day for 30 years. Like, how's that humane?
Not every institution locks someone in a cage 23 hours a day. That's a fairly...
Or 20 hours a day.
Yeah, that's a fairly American system.
The 23-hour a day model that you're talking about, that's Supermax, which is reserved for the worst of the worst. Like what you're talking about in terms of a one-and-done crime is horrific and probably would send them to a USP. But the point of the United States judicial system is that they start out in a USP. They have a certain number of security points allotted to them because of the nature of their crime. As they go through and program and don't commit further crimes while incarcerated, they're able to work their way down because they can show that they can rehabilitate. So it leaves it open for that person to go, oh, I was a dirtbag and what I did was horrific. Now let me actually grow as a person so that I don't do this again.
Like, oh, I raped kids. Oh man, I learned my lesson. I need to stop raping kids. Okay.
Are you saying that it's impossible for a person to learn their lesson?
I'm saying I don't care. If you rape a kid, justice is you need to be executed by the state. So to say, I raped
that right there, what you just said, that's at the heart of my problem with the death penalty. You just said, I don't care. So you brought feelings into a question that has to do with the state having a power that we don't allow its individual citizens to have.
you're also bringing feelings into it because you have so much sympathy and you feel so bad for this rapist.
So it's not actually for me. It's not. So for me, Brad, it's not. For me, Brad, it's actually not a question of sympathy, because if you look at the history of the death penalty and how it gets applied, it's disproportionately used on minorities. It costs more. It costs. Hold on. It costs more to execute a person than it does to keep them locked up for the rest of their lives.
Money well spent. Money well spent.
So you see, that's just it. For the investment of that extra money, we don't get a societal return because it doesn't lower crime.
Yeah,
we don't is used against minorities. Hold on. So if it doesn't reduce crime, if it's disproportionately used against minorities and doesn't do what it says it's going to do, how is that money well spent?
Well, the minorities thing we can just fix. That's a separate thing from the death penalty.
How?
It's fixing.
How do you fix that? How do you fix that, Brad?
You just
because
have
on the books. Hold on. On the books, Jim Crow laws were repealed. However, that did not change the fact that the death penalty was disproportionately used against blacks and other minorities. It is always skewed against those that were not white.
Okay.
So how do you fix that, Brad?
Well, if that's the case, then they should be fair. They should not do that. But what's that to do with the death penalty? So if that's true, then I agree they should not be targeting blacks and minorities. Now, what's that to do with the death penalty?
Well, so let's say this. Wait, hold on. So let me just say this then, Brad. So okay, let's have the death penalty when all these societal issues that could cause someone to be wrongly convicted. Once we fix all that, then we can institute the death penalty. How about that?
Yeah, if it's fixed to a high degree. Again, it's not going to be.
No, it needs to be fixed to 100%.
100% perfect. Well,
yeah.
that's an unfair standard.
Wait, so you don't want to put in the investment, spend the money to get it 100%?
No, I would love for it to be 100% perfect, but for you to say that this legal system must be 100% perfect before it can be enforced, that's not fair.
No, but that's because it's the argument you're making that somehow, hey, death penalty, it's okay for us to accept some of these, because we're, we can't get it 100%.
Okay, so my question that I asked you last week, I'm going to ask it to you right now. Last week you said 1% fail rate. In other words, 1% of killing an innocent person was an acceptable amount of collateral damage. So at what point does that become an unacceptable amount of collateral damage for the good of the nation? Is 2% too much of a fail rate? 5%? When does it become so failed that it's no longer acceptable?
I mean, can I ask you the same thing about anything else? Like, can I ask you? Like,
well, I'd like to hear your answer first. I'd like you to directly answer that question. 1% is an acceptable amount of collateral damage. What percentage does it start to be unacceptable to you?
I would say, well, would you say any system with a 70?
I want to hear what you want to say, not me. I want to hear your answer.
Okay, bro.
So I'm not gonna. I wouldn't say anything until I hear your answer.
Yeah, I would say a 70-80% success rate is pretty good for any system.
So you're telling me that 30% of the people, 30% of innocent people can die at the hands of the state.
Calm down, bro. Calm down.
No, we're talking about people's lives here, Brad. Yeah, I'm not going to calm down when you're willing to sacrifice.
Bro, is anyone on this call killing anybody right now? Like, take it down a notch, bro.
No, you're saying that it's okay for the state to kill 30% of innocent people.
Yeah, I'm having an opinion.
And what I'm saying is that is such a horrific thing.
It's hypocritical that you don't want to answer. So let me ask you, what legal system, how successful does a legal system have to be? What percent for you to implement it?
So my answer to that is that if you lock somebody away for life, they have the appeals process. They also have the ability to improve themselves while they're locked up. So they actually have a chance to reform. They have a chance to prove their innocence. And those 30% of people that you are allowing to be slaughtered unnecessarily.
Bro, you think U.S. prison
Hold
is
on,
a
I'm answering your
five-star
question.
hotel?
I'm not done answering your question.
Go ahead.
I'm not done answering your question, Brad.
Go ahead.
You asked me what percentage is acceptable. So you talked about money well spent. To me, that money being spent on actually reforming the people that are already locked up, looking into the community programs to keep these kinds of things from happening in the first place, that's money way better spent than having 30% of a prison population slaughtered that doesn't need to be there in the first place. How is it acceptable to you that 3 out of 10 people can be killed who don't deserve to be killed by the state? How is that acceptable to you?
Well, you forced me to answer a number, but you're talking about.
I didn't force
I know
you.
you're
That's
getting
the
ready to
standard that you
interrupt.
set
I know
for
you're
this
getting ready to
conversation.
interrupt, bro. If you keep interrupting, there's no point to have this conversation. Like, get your emotions out of it. Please calm down. Okay.
Wait. So let me just make one comment before Brad. So you said to take
but
emotions
I
out
let
of it.
John talk, and I can't even get 5 words out.
I know. I just want to make one point here. You know, you say get the emotions out of it, but the way you asked the other question, hey, what if your kid was raped or some kid was raped? Wouldn't you want to kill them? You know, that is an unfair question.
No, I didn't ask that. I didn't ask. You're making it sound like vigilante justice. I didn't ask that.
So you said if someone raped a kid, shouldn't the state put them to death?
Yeah, I said,
At
should there be a
30%.
legal system that punishes rapists with death? That's what I said.
Yes, but you can't be certain
So,
that they are.
Let's let Brad go. Go ahead, Brad.
Okay. Let me just say, it's not fair because look, I'm advocating for a legal system, and John's asking me what percent does that legal system need to be successful to implement it, and he will not be satisfied with anything less than 100%. What legal system will ever be 100%? By his logic, we can never have a legal system. And then his comeback is, oh, you can put them in prison so they can get reformed. U.S. prisons are not a 5-star hotel. Like, the death penalty.
What does that matter? Wait, what does that matter? What's the point of it being a 5-star hotel? Because we don't need it to be a 5-star hotel. So that's not a point that needs to be made.
The death penalty is way more humane than putting someone in prison for 10 years in the U.S.
Unless you didn't commit the crime, right? So you said 30%. So I have the graphics, the stats on the screen in terms of the number of death penalties per year. And in at the height, at the max, it was around 300 a year. So that's 90 people. If you're saying 30% is okay, 90 people a year.
Also, this comment from Jason Katz. Again, this is not a gotcha. This is hypocritical because, okay, if you're not a fan of the death penalty, Jason Katz, but you're a fan of jail, I can easily say, oh, he's a fan of jail unless he goes to jail. Like, what kind of argument is that?
Brad, would you be
Hold on, you
willing to be one of the 30%?
Can you repeat that? You cut out.
Would you be willing to be one of the 30%? Would you be willing to be one of the innocent 30% that the state kills?
Would I volunteer to be killed for no?
No. Would you? I mean, would you go? Would you go to the death chamber and say, "Oh well, this just is one of those things that happened"? Would you go to your death at peace, knowing that you were innocent and one of the 30% that was acceptable collateral damage?
Would you? I mean,
I'm asking you. No, Brad, please answer my question.
I mean, obviously, I wouldn't want that, but
okay. So you're not willing to follow your own system. So that makes you the biggest hypocrite of them all.
Because that's not my system. That's not my system.
You said 30% was okay, but you're not willing to be one of the 30%. You wouldn't find it acceptable if it was happening to you. So why should anybody else be okay with it?
Again, I never said I was okay with it. Like 0% would be ideal. But again, you're making the argument if it's anything less than 100% perfect, then you can't do it.
So the argument that I was making with the response to yours, you said that 1% was acceptable collateral damage. I asked you then at what point does it stop being acceptable? So I was asking for your standards so that I could understand your position. Now I am responding to what I think is abhorrent about that system, and apparently you think it's abhorrent as well, because you wouldn't go to your death happy if you were a part of that 30%.
Okay, so I answered your question.
Please don't interrupt. Please stop interrupting.
I thought you were done.
No, I'm not done. I'll let you know when I'm done. Because if you are not willing to be a part of that 30%, why should we have a system that allows for anybody to be a part of that 30%? Why is it acceptable? Why is it not acceptable for you to ever be a part of that 30%, but anybody else it's okay? Now, that is my direct question to you.
Yeah, we should never have a legal system unless it's 100% perfect. Yeah, you're right.
That's not what I asked. Please answer the question.
Repeat the question again.
Why is it not okay for you to be potentially a part of that 30%, but anybody else that's a part of that 30%, they should be okay with it?
It's not
Because
okay
as long as you have a system, as long as you have a system that has a 30% fail rate of executing a punishment that can be taken, there's no way you can have reciprocity. You can have reciprocity. If I put you in jail for 30 years, I can pay you for the time that you were gone in society. I can at least have some form of tangible apology.
Thanks, bro. I can't imagine that.
But
like,
if I kill you,
we locked you in a cage for 30 years, but like here's a paycheck.
That's what happens now. That's the way that's handled now.
Well, sorry, can I
So,
jump in?
John, do you think it's okay?
So my question to you, my question that you haven't answered
yet. John,
but
hold
John,
on.
you think we should have jails, right? Are you okay with people going to jail that don't deserve it, that are innocent? Are you okay with that, John? Is even 1% okay, John?
No, so hold on.
Should we get rid of jails? Even 1% is not okay, John. We have to get rid of all jails. 1% is not okay.
Brad. Let's hold on.
Stop getting emotional, Brad.
So hold on.
I'm just imitating.
So John, just take a step back and.
Hey, by the way, I hope everyone knows I like everyone here. This is just debate mode. Like, I got nothing against John, but it's just I'm gonna match.
Oh no, Brad, you're one of my favorite people. Truly you are.
Okay, cool. As long as we know this is like the debate, you know what I mean?
So as far as this goes, the question that I asked you, which you haven't answered me yet, and I'll answer your question as soon as you answer mine. If you're not okay with being a part of the 30% that the state kills unnecessarily, why should anybody be okay with being a part of the 30% that the state kills unnecessarily?
For the greater good of society.
So a society must be willing to do.
That's how a society works. If you have a system that works for most people, that is preserving the good of society, it would be ideal if it was perfect. But no system will be perfect. And I could say the same thing to you. If you support having jails, those jails better be 100% perfect, or else you can't have the jails.
Hold
on.
John,
let's just stop here with the straw man. So Brad, the reason why the death penalty was repealed, or at least slowed down, and you can see it in the graph how it goes down, is because the society has started finding that there was a bias in the death penalty, and that there were issues with the death penalty being effective deterrent, et cetera. So 30. It was much less than 30% that caused this decline in the death penalty.
What's that noise? Somebody has.
It might be. Hold on. Let me just mute a couple people. So before we go, instead of kind of staying on this, I do want to bring in Ook, because Ook said he has some personal experience in this. Go ahead, Ook.
Okay. My ex-partner had a daughter, and after a couple of years, we found out that the daughter's biological father's brother had been molesting her. Now, that's horrific, and my first instinct was, well, I'm going to shoot the bastard. Then I found out that he is actually, even though he's 30, he has the mind of a 7-year-old. So no way could I justify any physical damage to him, or he shouldn't receive any punishment. I did go to her biological father and threaten to break every joint in his body if it happened again. So you can't just mandatory sentencing doesn't work. So that's one. The second real life experience I've had is, Blarg might know the group that I'm talking about because, I used to ride a lot of motorcycles. I was a member of a club that is now illegal in Australia. And we would have people who their daughters were raped or whatever, or they, something horrific had happened. The court had failed them. They'd come to us. We'd double check, triple check, and we would take what would be classed as vigilante justice. And it's quite amazing what you can achieve with a ball peen hammer, a 12-ounce ball peen hammer. You can systematically break every single bone in a person's hand within 5 minutes. Just really, like every one hit, break one bone, one hit. And I would always ask the people, were you left or right-handed? Because I didn't want to take their ability away to earn money or to affect their families' lives. But there was a payment that had to be paid. And yeah, you had to pay it physically. Now, I actually did that quite a few times. So I know where you're coming from, justice and one, but it has to be tempered. Every single case has to be taken separately, and it has to be judged separately. So just like I couldn't do anything to the guy who molested what I considered my stepdaughter at the time, but I could make sure that his family knew that if it ever happened again, well, they would be held responsible. And it's, yeah, so I'm with you. I understand the physical, there has to be a payment, but it's a case-by-case basis. And just to give you an idea, the Australian military doesn't have, the only death penalty in the Australian military is if you desert or feed to the other side or feed information to the other side. And that was removed in 1903. No, and it was all because of a case called Breaker Morant. There's a movie about it. If you want to go and look at it. And they murdered. No, they executed a guy. And no, but it was done for good reasons. He was actually a spy for the Boers. It was in the Boer War. So, but they did it without orders. So you can't have mandatory sentencing. It just doesn't work. So I know where you're coming from. You want justice, physical justice, but you have to temper it. That's all that's me done.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. Can I get 2 minutes to speak, and then anyone can respond? Because I'm going against the status quo, and I think my position is nuanced. So can I just kind of lay it out?
Go ahead.
Okay. So yeah, I agree. It's got to be case by case. It's got to be nuanced, and it's got to be a fair legal system. My thing is, when John talks about jail or prison, I'm not sure what he's picturing, but what I'm picturing in the U.S. is if somebody goes to prison for years, it is a living hell. I'm not a fan of the prison system we have in the U.S. I think we need prison reform. I'm not a fan of torture. I don't support torture unless it's for a really good cause. Like if somebody knows the combination to the bomb and you need to torture them to get the combination, okay, so be it. But to torture somebody for revenge or for joy is not moral to me. So I don't believe in torture for torture's sake, for revenge or pleasure. And I see the U.S. prison system we currently have as complete torture. You go to prison for years, you're locked in a cage like an animal for 20 hours a day. You're fed the most disgusting food. There's no nutrients. You get no sunlight. You're going crazy. You're depressed. I don't know how the fuck somebody can last one day in the prison system, let alone 1 week, let alone a year. So I see the death penalty as being more humane than saying, I'm going to send you to prison for 10 years or 20 years where you're going to have that experience. And in prison, you can get raped, you can get beat up, you probably have to join a gang, you can get stabbed, you can get killed. It's torture. It's a living hell being in prison. And then when you get out, that's 10 years of your life. Even if you get out of prison, okay, now you have a criminal record. It's going to be very difficult for you to get a house, very difficult for you to get a job. Maybe you've been stabbed, maybe you've been raped, and it's 10 years down the drain. Like, I would imagine it's very difficult to go to prison for 10 years.
Brad,
and come out
Brad, we get
the
point. So if you could keep going.
So my point is, if you oppose the death penalty, but
Can I jump in?
support that, I don't see how that prison is more humane than the death penalty. Is my point.
Brad, can I got a couple of points I wanted to talk through. One is, are you familiar with the sort of concept of black box morality, or as a way of developing a moral system?
No, I haven't heard of that.
Essentially, it works by you imagine a system of morality or a system of laws, a system of ethics, whichever way you want to go, based upon you being within the society that is going to be receiving those rules, but not knowing what position within that society you will hold. So what most people do inherently is that they just kind of imagine themselves and then construct a world around themselves. In this case, you don't know where you'll fit into that society. Essentially, you'll just wake up in that society as some random person. You might be a minority, you might be a gay person, you might be a trans person, you might be the richest person alive. You don't know where you'll fall. You may be uneducated, you may be super smart. You don't know where you'll fall in there. So essentially, in this context, if you had to imagine a society where you've got the death penalty existing there, and as per your sort of 20 to 30% of the people for whom will be receiving that will be completely innocent people. So it's easy to say, imagine yourself as, I would never get myself into that position. But if you put yourself in this black box world, imagine yourself, do you think it is reasonable, and would you like to live in a society where you could be that 20% of the people, because the person you'll be in that society is not the person is very unlikely to be the person you are today. It could be anyone. Do you think that is a reasonable society to live in?
Again, I would say for the greater good of society, if it has a good success rate, then it's a good legal system. I mean,
But
is
it
there
doesn't.
is there the chance that I could fall victim to the legal system I advocate for? Okay, sure, there's a chance, but that doesn't make it a bad legal system.
But it
Again,
doesn't make it better.
if the standard
Wait,
is perfection, then
No, like I said, it's not, right? So it's not
not
just
better.
that it's not perfect. The issue is that you look at, I mean, so there were like 240 people who were free just from the Freedom Project. 240 people who were innocent, who were on the death penalty, who actually got saved. There were a lot of people, I'm sure, who weren't. So it's not about it being perfect. You know, there's, like I said, in the stat, you can see that all the different states, they came to the realization that this isn't working. It's not that it's perfect. It's not perfect. It's completely broken.
Yeah, but also it doesn't do the thing you want it to do, and that's the important thing, and that's the mistake you keep making there, Brad, saying that if it's for the greater good. But there is no greater good coming out of it. It doesn't act as a deterrent. It doesn't achieve the results that it would achieve. And if you want to argue that someone must pay, let's say the person is guilty, you'd argue that you should argue, if you're being logically consistent, that keeping the person in jail for the rest of their life is a more severe punishment than the death penalty, if you were to follow your own logic.
yeah, it's way more severe, but it's not moral, because I don't find torture just for the sake of torture, for the sake of revenge. I don't find
It's
that
not the
moral.
sake, but you said it's not for the sake of torture, right? It's not sake of revenge.
For the
You're
greater
saying
good.
you're saying that for society's good, that you have to have this kind of retribution.
Yeah, the difference is with the death penalty. Okay, if I take a rapist and we give him the death penalty, he's going to be dead. And then once he's dead, who knows what happens after that? You guys believe he just sleep, so he'll be resting in peace. But
He
I
might
don't
actually
think
go
it's
to heaven, right? If he accepted Christ before he gets executed.
well.
Yeah.
That's what the Christians believe, which I find problematic. But anyway,
Okay.
but yeah, no, I'm with you on that. But the difference is with death penalty, you just execute the person, they're dead. It's not a torture. It's not you committed this crime, so now I'm going to torture you for 10 years by locking you in a cage and everything I stated before. That's torture.
Oh, wait. Then why are we not killing anyone who gets over 10 years of prison time?
Yeah, should just execute everyone.
No, because it depends on the crime. It's not based on years. My philosophy is not based
No,
on years.
I'm not
It's based
saying
on
it's
the crime.
about, but you're saying over 10 years, it's like it's worse than the death.
No, I'm saying
Yeah.
reform. I'm saying reform the prison system, and I do think 10 years is too long. Again, depending on the crime, it's case by case. But to say you committed this crime, so we're going to take your life away from you for 10 years, we're going to lock you in a cage for 10 years. What crime could somebody possibly do for 10 years?
Yes, but
And
whatever
if, they,
that
and, it,
crime
and if it
is,
is that bad, then it should probably be. If
death
it actually is that bad, it should probably be death penalty. But again, it's like the U.S. government is not fair. They'll be putting people for 10 years for things that shouldn't be. But go ahead.
So you
Yeah.
are saying that the system is broke. So you agree.
Fuck yeah, the system's broken. Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Brad.
So let me just sum up this. So we've kind of given you sort of multiple different reasons why someone would be against the death penalty. And I think we've brought up a lot of valid reasons. So it's not for no reason. So for you to say that having this opposition is immoral, I don't think makes sense. What do you say?
I would say I can see from your point of view, you don't want to take a life. You want to give second chance, third chance, fourth chance. I'm saying from my point of view, the moral thing is there are certain crimes that are so horrendous that if you commit them, it's game over.
No,
Like, you're
I
done.
get it. I understand.
Yeah.
My point is about you saying opposition to the death penalty is immoral. You're not saying that the death penalty is immoral or prison sentence is immoral. You're saying opposition to the specific policy that most states are backing off on. Somehow that is immoral. That's what
Yeah.
you said.
Yeah, I stand by that. And in the United States, they're getting softer on crime than ever, especially in the blue states. So
Even though crime has been continually going down, more on the blue states than on the red states.
okay. I mean, again, this gets into a whole different. If you want to, believe that, but
Stats, believe facts, stats. Which
I
one do you
mean,
think?
you really think crime's going down in the U.S.?
Yes,
Yes, it is.
that is
Yes,
a
it is.
demonstrably true statement.
So the U.S. is safer today than
Yeah.
By a long, long way than it has been ever.
Especially if you're in the
Okay.
minority.
Is that why I see in my hometown on the news this guy has been in and out of jail.
Wait, hold
like,
on, Brad.
and
No, so instead
yeah,
of like
you're gonna
going
say
into this,
it's anecdotal, but it still
Yeah.
matters. Go.
Yes, there's
it
a
is.
reason why
It is.
there's a
Do you know how
reason
many
why the
people live in
plural.
the
So
U.S.?
Brad,
How many people live in the U.S.?
yeah. So I actually want to start with where you and I agree,
Okay.
and I want to say just how much I was struck by how much empathy you spoke to the horrors of long-term incarceration. You and I agree on those points. Prison reform is something that's very important to me. I've known people that have gone through the prison system. I've personal people in my life that have spent 10, 20 years behind bars. Now, some of them were dirtbags. Some of them weren't. Some of them were just dumb people that were doing dumb things while doing dumb things. That's a whole rabbit hole that we don't need to necessarily go down right now in this conversation. So when you talk about the need for us to have prison reform, on that, I agree with you. I think that there are things that are fundamentally broken about the prison industrial complex. The second that you have private companies that can make money off of incarcerating people, that system is broken.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
yeah, so I want to make sure that we focus. I think in the last chunk of this, where you and I, and where I think we all can kind of agree that we have a system that's very, very broken. And you talk about for the good of society, and see that is at the heart of my opposition to the death penalty, because I've seen the horrors of what prison does to people and the money that could be spent on prosecuting a case to death, literally. That money could have been put into social programs, could have been put into reform programs, could have been put into areas that lessen the likelihood of people ending up in a situation where they commit a capital offense. Do you disagree that it's better to have a society that addresses mental health issues before they become lethal?
Yeah.
Is that a terrible idea?
No, I agree with that. So
Okay,
this is
so
something. Yeah. Can I say real quick?
yeah, go ahead.
I believe in I still believe in death penalty on the back end for crimes that meet that standard, but I'm 100% for things on the front end to prevent this situation in the first place. I want to cover it top to bottom from all angles. But go ahead.
Yeah, so where you and I agree is that you and I don't agree on the 10th domino, but you and I do agree that dominoes 1, 2, and 3 probably are rotten and need to be replaced.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. See, I'm playing nice.
Oh yeah, it's
No,
all good, bro. Yeah, it's just debate mode. But yeah,
Look,
I mean,
I told you, I told you, man. Look,
yeah.
I find your position abhorrent, but I find you delightful.
Thank you, bro. Appreciate that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think
can-
I think a misconception as well. And to be fair, there are pro death penalty individuals that fall into this category, and I find them very distasteful. But there are people that fall into the category of like they want to torture people. They're out for revenge. They're bloodthirsty. That's not my position. Like I said, if you tell me this person did this horrendous crime, we're going to execute them. If it meets the criteria, I'm all for it. If you tell me this person did this horrendous crime, we're going to torture them for 5 years, I'm against that. And that's why we need prison reform. The U.S. prison system is just legalized torture. What reform are they getting?
Are you familiar with the writings of Angela Davis?
No.
So you personally might find her a little bit more radical than your taste might allow for, and for your position to allow for. But she does have a book about abolishing prisons. Now, I don't know that I necessarily agree with her to the extent of fully abolishing prisons, but what she talks about are those exact issues of how we got here with a prison industrial complex this corrupt and this toxic to a properly functioning society. Her position is get rid of prisons, whereas I think you and I can at least agree that whatever punishment structure remains, there needs to be kind of a clean sweep and a reevaluating of how we recognize actions that are antithetical to what we find to be a good society. I mean, it's sort of the principle of the broken window. If you allow somebody to throw a rock at a window and break it, doesn't that necessarily mean that you allow greater and greater things? That sort of flawed thinking, we become so heavy on punishment that any conversation of reform immediately gets pushed aside because it's seen as soft on crime. But if you look at historically how the death penalty has been applied, as I said, it costs more than it does to have somebody locked away for life, which you and I both find horrible. But if we're going to be spending the money, at least that's a better, that's spending less money. Which again, you and I don't agree on. You and I agree that prison is terrible.
But I think I'm with you on all of that. Just as a constructive criticism for just one thing, I think when it comes to this is spending more money, I think that's a good argument sometimes, but I think there's certain things that it really doesn't apply. There's certain things where it's like from a moral perspective, okay, if I need to spend more money, so be it.
I get what you're saying. I guess my position is the cost benefit analysis. If it doesn't do what we say we want it to do, which is reduce crime. If we turns out that it doesn't reduce crime, it's disproportionately used against blacks and other minorities, and we have ways of better using that money that are more equitable, and I would argue, since more people are alive at the end of it, more moral, then there's just no metric where the death penalty survives that rubric. Especially when you look at how other companies, other dictatorships throughout history have used the death penalty as a way of silencing opposition. So it's just, no matter how it gets applied, it's either a racist system, an expensive system, an effective system, or a tool of the government. The death
Hey, John,
penalty
you're roboting.
connected to it.
Okay, John.
Yeah, he cut out for me the last 10 seconds.
Sorry.
Cutting out.
Can you hear me now?
Reconnect.
Yeah, I can hear you better now.
Yeah. All right. Give me. Let me bounce out, and I'll bounce back in. Give me 5 minutes. Did you catch that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll be back in 5 minutes.
Okay. I'm not sure if we're gonna stay on for 5 more minutes. I do have to cut it off relatively early. Blarg, what did you mean about showing the crime rate graph? The one I had before?
No, I was just looking at one on the Pew Research. It's a thing called What the Data Says About Crime in the US. There's a graph a couple down. I've tried to post the link to it, but it should come up fairly quickly. I just searched for crime, US crime statistics by year, and I got it as my second link.
Yeah,
I do
well,
want to. Good.
We can leave that as homework for Brad, but go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, I do want to point out one thing, and I know we'll disagree on it, by now, but that's okay. But deterrent is only one part of the death penalty. Justice is the other part. So hypothetically, I don't actually believe this, but for the sake of argument, hypothetically, let's say you have the same amount of murders and rapes, regardless of the death penalty. Let's say it's a zero deterrent. I would still implement it for the justice. Somebody who rapes, somebody who murders for no reason, they forfeit their life. That's the justice of it.
Yeah, but we are talking about more of a retributive justice, right? Not utilitarian justice.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Yeah, I believe in rehabilitation, but I'm not interested in rehabilitating everybody.
Yeah, but who
you
decides?
Would think you should be interested in rehabilitating people who can be rehabilitated.
Why?
How do you decide which crime? Because you're definite that if someone rapes a child, that one is in your list.
That's the highest of the high. That's the highest of the high.
What about if someone murders another person?
If it's depends on the context. If it's for no reason, then definitely.
Yeah. See, there you're starting to also have to draw lines in the sand based upon opinions.
Yeah, it's context. You just said murder, but let me give you two scenarios. Like, I'll be real quick. Okay, one scenario, two guys get in each other's face. It's mutual. They're screaming at each other. They're having a fight. One of them accidentally murders the other. Okay, second scenario, a guy walks down the street.
It's not a murder.
Okay, but you see my point. But second scenario, guy walks down the street, just kills somebody for no reason. Okay, those are different, right?
Question: there's always going to be a reason. The reason might not be understandable to you. Let's say, for example, that scenario exactly as you did it. Let's say he had a hallucination at that time. Something happened in his brain that caused something, and he thought he was protecting someone, so he shot a person to death. That's what it felt like to him. The problem is you can't. There's no possibility of being. So, like, you could argue that if a person just say is a serial killer and demonstrates enjoyment for killing, so they're killing for the purpose of enjoyment, maybe that one is a possible argument. But in every one of these cases, you've got these overlapping issues. One, the death penalty does not deter people from committing crimes that would cause the death penalty. It just, on average, people commit at least as many where the death penalty exists and where it doesn't. You talk about justice, but if you wanted to make a person pay, and that really is what you're talking about, the locking someone up for a lot of years makes them pay more than just taking away. Life ends. That's it. It's all done. There's no more paying to be had there. There's no retributions. But you try and seem. Please don't take this the wrong way, but it seems like weasel out of that by saying, I don't like torture. But I don't see that as as an improvement. You're illogical on those two sides. One, they should pay, but when given an option about how to make someone pay, you choose the one that has the less payment. That doesn't make sense.
Okay. Yeah, I can explain. So It's consistent.
So
My
just
position is
just for everyone here. So this will be the last comment, Brad's comment. I do have to close this down live
Yep.
stream, but Brad, you're definitely welcome to come back next week. But go ahead, make your last comment.
Okay. Yeah, so my position is consistent. I want to point out during the course of this conversation, we've been referring to horrendous crimes the entire time. But obviously, you put different crimes in different categories. So if it's a lesser crime, I would be in favor of a temporary punishment and perhaps some rehabilitation if it's needed, such as flogging. I'm a fan of flogging. But my
Well, you said you
position.
you didn't want torture, or don't you said that, right?
So if you say flogging's torture, I feel like that's a real stretch. Let me explain. So there's a difference between you flog
Wait,
somebody
so
for.
instead of going, so sorry, I sidetracked you, but why don't you continue on? We can have this discussion, the torture discussion next week.
Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, there's a difference between somebody committed a crime, you give them a corporal punishment, you flog them for 1 day, and then they go on with their life, versus locking them in a cage for 5 years. So that part's, that's that. But as far as so my position is not every time someone commits a crime, give them the death penalty. Of course not. Like, there's different crimes. But let's say somebody has committed a horrendous crime, then it is more humane to just give them the death penalty than to put them in the U.S. prison for 5 years, because that is 5 years of torture. Now, if you want to argue that flogging them for 5 minutes is also torture,
well, we can have that discussion later. We don't have to get into that right now, but just to again bring it up, the issue isn't really about the death penalty per se. This came up because of you saying that it's immoral to have a different view on a death penalty besides being all for it. So that was supposed to be where we were supposed to go, and maybe we can kind of keep going on that to maybe get next week. We'll see if you still believe that people who have a different view on this is immoral. But I want to thank you and everyone for being on. And I know, John, you weren't necessarily trying to be abusive. It's just I think the volume comes up really loud on your side.
And I do want to. So the volume in this particular case, I'm not on my normal laptop. So if I came across as louder than I intended, then I was louder than I intended. This is a very personal matter to me, but again, I want to be very clear, Brad. You, the person, I'm having fun talking to you, man. I really am. You remind, and please take this in the compliment that it's intended. You remind me a lot of my brother.
Okay.
He's a conservative Catholic. We haven't agreed on much since we were children.
Yeah.
But that fun exchange, that back and forth. Again, you call it debate mode. All right, fine. We'll use that phrase. I find the position abhorrent, but I find you to be, you're coming across as authentic. You're trying to be as authentic as possible, and I recognize that.
I appreciate that. Yeah, likewise.
And we will close with that brother from another mother. So thanks everyone, and we will see you in the comments.